And welcome back to the Black Psychologist podcast. We appreciate everybody being here. I am one half of your humble and gracious host and clinician here for your listening pleasure, Dr. Kyle Osborne, as always. And of course, I'm never ever here by myself at all. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend. All right, stop what you're doing because he's about to ruin the image and style that you used to. None other than Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. I think I like that's the best intro so far, man. I ain't mad at you.
Yeah, yeah.
What's up, man? How you been? How
Sometimes,
you been,
sometimes you
bro?
gotta, you gotta humpty it up real quick. You know what I mean, bro?
Yo, man. Listen, man. Digital Underground, bro.
Absolutely,
Classic, man. Bring me right back to sixth, seventh grade, man.
absolutely.
That's
Rest in peace,
that
Shock
was
G.
our first some people's first introduction to Tupac, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was their roadie,
On
man.
a mainstream on a main
Yeah,
yeah,
he
on a
came
mainstream
up through
level.
them.
You know what I
Yes,
mean?
That's big. Episode 23, bro. Episode
Yeah,
23. That's
man.
where we're at. We
We
rolling,
here,
man.
man.
We are rolling.
Definitely
So we
before
definitely
we get into it,
what?
well, just before we get into it, just want to thank everybody for listening, subscribing. We definitely appreciative. And please just continue to share the videos. Subscribers is growing. Um, and definitely we humbled by the support. So keep it coming. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Here we go. So breaking news earlier today, coming from the Olympic Village over there in Tokyo. So for those that aren't aware that haven't gotten the news, the GOAT herself, Simone Biles, withdrew from the women's gymnastics team final earlier today. And she decided to withdraw from the gymnastics team final event, citing mental health concerns. And I'm going to read what her quote that she had mentioned in some of the reports. She says, "Whenever you get into a high stress situation, you kind of freak out. I have to focus on my mental health and not jeopardize my mental health and well being. It sucks when you're fighting within your own head. And people have to understand or remember that we're not just athletes, we're people at the end of the day. And Team USA is planning to have a mental rest day on Wednesday or tomorrow. So like literally that happened this morning, and there's more information still coming out. So we'll still continue to monitor. But Jay, when this hit your news feed, what did you think? What were your thoughts on everything?
Um, Honestly, I'm not surprised, right? Like I've been saying on here for months. This new generation has they have a different attitude towards social issues, towards what they view, what people have traditionally viewed as authority, and everything else, right? And when we saw LeBron James, on the app commercial, we should have known we were going to see this coming, right? We see Naomi Osaka withdraw from the French. I don't know if it's the French Open or whatever that major tournament was over there. We should have saw this coming, right? So I think it's a good thing because again, from our perspective, they're doing what we ask, right? We're asking people to prioritize mental health so that we don't get to the point where we have emergencies and we have the more extreme end of reactions and kind of coping mechanisms. So people are doing what we ask. And I think that what we have used to as the consumers is that it may not result in the outcomes that we want, right? In terms of the entertainment. So telling people to prioritize their mental health may result in somebody like Paul George sitting out, right? And us not being able to see him perform, right? Simone Biles sitting out, right? But we have to support these individuals because if they had a broken leg, if they had other medical disorders, then we would support them without thinking about it. So I think it's a good thing, and I think people are just going to have to change their perception, right? Because in the article they were talking about she didn't perform, but she came out and she was kind of sitting in the stands, rooting on her teammates. So I can just see the backlash coming, right?
Mm.
she's strong enough to go out there and participate. So if she's that quote unquote sick, or quote unquote ill, then how could she be strong enough to do that, right?
Yeah,
And then I
that's
think
gonna come
so
out.
it's coming, right? So education is important so that people understand that when individuals are experiencing like depression, anxiety, social support is important, right? So somebody who's depressed, yeah, they might not be able to perform, their duties, but going somewhere, being, having that social support, that social connection is still important. So, I mean, I was happy, but I was also kind of, um, hesitating, waiting for the reaction.
Yeah, it's coming.
So what was your first thoughts when you heard about this?
I'm happy that there's not a medical injury or it's not a physical injury, because there were, some of the reports that came out were saying that she was injured. I think the way she had, I think, walked away from the area when she went back in the locker room initially. So people were fearing, or there were reports coming out that was a medical injury. So I'm happy that she's not physically, or there's not a medical injury taking place. And a couple of things that you mentioned, like you said, you're not shocked, right? You're not surprised, in the sense of, there's a situation where, and I like, another thing I want to highlight is, she mentioned that we're people at the end of the day, which is true. I'm happy
Right.
that she mentioned that, because that is the perspective that people should start adopting. Yeah, she's an Olympic, world class athlete, but we have to remember, like, there's immense pressure that goes along with being a world class athlete or becoming an Olympic athlete, and then even more importantly, staying an Olympic athlete. Like, I can't imagine feeling the pressure or feeling judged or always being evaluated and having the need to perform at the top of your game in front of other people. I can't imagine the stress that comes with. And we also have to keep in mind that these are a different type of Olympics, right? So we have, of course, the normal Olympics come with that, the typical pressure and stress. But we have to remember, like, this year, there's a whole wide array of different variable or stress variables that were added, right? So we have COVID. So it's a
Right.
situation where now you're placing them similar to, like you mentioned, like how Paul George and LeBron James, they're essentially in a bubble out there
Right.
in Tokyo. So now, not only do they have to continue to work hard and train to perform, but now they have to incorporate and participate in all of these different safeguards just so they can stay healthy, because we know that there's an outbreak taking place over there. So amid the outbreak, they have to do what they have to do to stay safe, because I don't think they weren't even involved in the opening ceremony with the rest of the athletes. Like Team USA, the gym team, the gymnast team, they actually did their own kind of ceremony outside, because I saw like what they posted, and that's just a safeguard that they put in place for them to stay healthy. So you got that. Now the fact that they're in a bubble, there are no spectators, right? So that means limited family support. That means limited social support. So now you're where you would usually have other family members there to support you if you are experiencing any type of distress or any type of things, they're not there. So
Right.
you have all of these other different things. In addition to this, it's 2021, right? So the Olympics were originally scheduled for last year. So now there's an additional year of training. So we're
Right.
usually they would have been finished. They might have been doing some other different things. Now the body is going through additional year of training because everything was delayed due to COVID. So keeping in mind that this is an individual who has had, in addition to the typical pressures and stress that comes with being an Olympic athlete, now you have the COVID precaution. Now you have all these other different things. And I think the perspective that people need to keep in mind is that they are still just human at the end of the day. So I'm happy for her that she, didn't feel the need to kind of have to battle her way through this, right? Because, like you said, the same way with Naomi and LeBron, the way that they're putting their health first, I feel like this is great. Like, this is, she said that she had noticed that she wasn't able to sleep earlier and that she was like experiencing a lot of shaking. And so she knew that something was off. So, as
Right.
opposed to trying to battle it out, as a lot of people said, like you said, the narrative is gonna come. People are gonna have their opinions. Oh, you should have just toughed it out. Your teammates are counting on you, and so on and so forth. She decided to put her health first, and that's great awareness on her part. That she says, you know what, I'm not going to take a chance on exacerbating these symptoms or whatever I'm experiencing. Because, you know, the thing that we've always talked about with our clients and our patients are you're the best, you know, professional with you, right? No, nobody knows you better than yourself. And if you feel off, then you shouldn't go forward with whatever activity or whatever might be contributing to this. Like some of the symptoms that she mentioned could be indicative of anxiety, stress, depression, some of the things that you just mentioned earlier. So that is great awareness on her part to say, you know what, I'm going to put my health first, and, you know, the hell with everything else. I got to do my health first. So like, I felt that that was like really powerful on her part. And that goes right up there with her Olympic accomplishments that she's already achieved, is putting her health first.
You know, again, only thing I would really add to that is, you know, I don't know if it was in the works or not, but again, the result from all these, you know, top athletes, top people in their sport, you know, in taking this kind of stand is, you know, you have Team USA saying they're taking a mental rest day, right? I don't know if you would have seen that without Michael Phelps, without LeBron James, you know, without Simone Biles. These are the people who are the bosses in their sports, right? These aren't people that they're, you know, considered just, you know, trying to make their name, right? And it's transcending kind of sports, right? People that are giants in their field. So we have Coco doing the verses, you know, talking about her experience. We got Meek Mill on Instagram, you know, talking about therapy and making it more accessible and, you know, kind of making it more palatable, for lack of a better term, for, you know, groups of people. So people are taking the lead, right? And we're not really, again, we're talking about giants in their respective fields, you know, whether that be sports, news, entertainment, or whatever. And I think that that's going to make the difference, right? Because not only do, you know, young people kind of follow these individuals, but these are people that we idolize, right? In one way or another. Whether we want to be like them in terms of what they've achieved financially or in their field. So it's kind of easier for us to see, well, you know, if Meek Mill is accepting of therapy, you know, then me too, right? Then I can go, right, and not be ashamed of it, right? If LeBron James uses this Calm app and uses these coping skills, then I can't. I don't have to be ashamed of it. If Simone Biles, you know, who has all of these gold medals, you know, is willing to say, wait a minute, I don't need one more. My mental health is more important than the person that is trying to struggle through that day at work, you know, might be more likely to kind of reach out for assistance. So that's all I would add. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good start. And like we always talk about, messenger is important, right? And I think we got the right messengers when it comes to this.
Yeah, I like that. The message, absolutely, that it's especially to not just young people, but even younger folks that are looking up to them. That it's sending a message that it's okay sometimes for you to sit out the big competition to focus on yourself, because, you know, I believe that that shows not only how strong a competitor you are, but how strong of a person you are, to say, hey, you know what, I'm rather just going to sit out, like you said, focus on your health to make sure things don't get worse, because we've seen situations when people do try to battle it out and it does get worse. Like, you're showing you're a big competitor, you're an even bigger person, and, you know, I'm going to focus on myself, and it's okay to feel like that. It's okay to not fold and, you know, have to deal with some of those pressures of your whoever is going to be saying, hey, you should just go out. So I'm liking the message, like you mentioned. So we'll see, you know. I'm hoping that, you know, because I think she's still eligible to perform in some of the individual events that are happening like later this week and over the weekend. And you know, I wish her the best. I hope she gets the support and the service and treatment that she needs, and that she takes it day by day, and that she continues to put her health first before she steps back onto the mat. So, you know, we'll see.
Definitely, man. Definitely looking to see kind of how this plays out.
Absolutely. All right. So we just talked about the good ways, the message that are being spread across by athletes. And so now we're switching gears to a new message that a lot of that some cities are adopting in regards to crisis response teams. So recently in New York, this past June, so last month in June, New York City started its Behavioral Health Emergency Assistance Division, or they call BHERD. And so what this initiative does is that it provides more targeted care for those that are struggling with mental health issues and emergencies such as suicide attempts, substance misuse, and serious mental illness. So within this program, what it does is that it dispatches mental health specialists and paramedics instead of police for certain nonviolent emergency calls that have resulted in a lot of people being able to accept assistance and fewer people being sent to hospitals. So there were some stats that were here from June 6th to July 7th. BHER received roughly 16 mental health calls each day, right? And so these calls that BHER that was responding to, they were responding into the area of northern Manhattan, which includes parts of Harlem, which receives the city's highest number of mental health emergency calls. And within those calls that they received, 95% of the cases, people accepted the care from BHER. And so, and additionally, 50% of the people treated from BHER were transported to the hospital for more care. So I'm liking this initiative. What was your take reading through this article, Jeff?
Well, it's two levels, right? One, the initiative worked, right? And the proof is in the statistics. It's nothing that can be argued. We're talking about 911 calls. So we're talking about real emergencies. So there are two results that really matter here. The number of people who accepted help from essentially the social workers and mental health professionals versus police officers exclusively went up 13%, from 95% to 82%. So more people are receiving the help that they need, all right? And they save the state money, right? How did they save the state money? Because fewer people were sent to the hospital, 50% versus 82%, right? So without digging into that stat, it's fair to say, that if fewer people are going to the hospital, that means that the individuals that were responding to the calls previously were sending 32% people to the hospital that most likely did not need to be there, right?
Right.
So the intervention worked. On a second level, I think it speaks to a lot of the social issues that we've been talking about, right? Specifically issues that impact Black communities, right? We talk about Black Lives Matter a lot, and the only reason why I'm bringing them up specifically is because a lot of times when we look at a lot of shows, specifically conservative shows, that we talking about defund the police and talking about it in a negative kind of light, right? And that's why it's important to have information, because when people talk about defunding the police, they're not talking about taking money away from the police, right? They're talking about redistributing it. So if we look in Minneapolis, where they did defund the police, they redistributed the money. No police officers were fired, right? But they did programs and incentives like this. And why do they do programs, incentives like this? Because over 70% of the crimes, committed in communities are committed through different factors such as poverty, homelessness, alcoholism, those type things, right? So we're trying to put the right services in the right place. So it speaks to two things. The intervention worked, number one. Two, and they're really addressing the issues that needed to be addressed. So I think it's very important that we kind of look. This is a small program, pilot program, but it's important that we kind of look at these programs, because when you have people throwing phrases around, in a negative light, you want to really know what they mean, right? So when people say defund the police and they're talking about, reallocating money, these are the type of programs that they're talking about.
Right, and I'm happy that this pilot program was put into Harlem, right? It was put into these other different areas, in these predominantly Black areas, because they're sending out the clinicians that are trained, right? So they're trained, whether they're social workers, whether they're counselors, psychologists, therapists, or what have you, the individuals on this response team are aware of systemic biases. They're aware of systemic racism because they're trained. So when they're responding, now that they have this awareness, now that they have this training that you're dealing with this particular population of people that have, these issues or that have experienced these negative interactions with cops and with police and law enforcement, they're able to, they go into a situation where they're able to respond quickly. They're able to assess, they're able to de-escalate, and they're able to, treat and assist with getting the person the proper form of care. And, that's been a big issue when you have, again, law enforcement going into these communities. And and I know, Jay, we work with patients or with clients that are in crisis, right? So it's a very, difficult situation. However, when you have people that are experiencing a mental health crisis, the police are usually the first ones that are called. And so police are trained differently than someone, that's on this response team. Like, they're trained to respond with force. So, when they arrive on the scene, the first thing that they're going to do is ensuring, primary goal or their go-to is to force compliance. And I know someone that's in crisis usually is in a position or doesn't have the awareness or the ability to, understand, or be able to, it's not going to respond well to that force. Right. So, and when you have that type of situation, unfortunately, it's going to lead to unnecessary and disastrous effects. Something that comes to mind with me is the Walter Wallace Jr. situation that took place last year, where you had, the 27-year-old young kid that was, experiencing a mental health crisis, and he was shot by police over there in Philly. And so people, especially African Americans that are experiencing behavioral health needs, are 16 times more likely to be killed by police. So when you're sending these individuals that are trained in a certain way, and I'm not talking about law enforcement in any type of disparaging way, but again, there's a difference in training. There's a difference in goal as far as when they arrive on the scene. So like you said, it's working when you have people that are going to be receptive to the care, that know how to respond appropriately to a situation, to one, not only understanding the racial underlines and dynamics to it, and then they're also understanding, okay, this is how they're going to quickly assess the situation. So, because the goal is to de-escalate and keep people safe. But when you have a different kind of training mind that go into it, you have these adverse, consequences of situations. So I'm happy that they launched the pilot program in this area and they're getting good results.
I mean, I agree. And I think the goal was met, right? Because what was the goal? The goal was more targeted care for individuals struggling with mental illness, right? And that was achieved. I think more importantly, we kind of talk about the bigger issue. I think maybe people are starting to get the point, that police officers are not equipped to deal with all mental health issues, right?
Right.
Specifically emergencies. So I think that is kind of that's kind of the umbrella that this is kind of under. And I think all of those that's kind of why I brought up the defund the police issue, right? Because all of these issues are connected. All of these issues are things that people in the community, organizations, and individuals in general have been talking about, for years as a problem in terms of unnecessary police contact. So I will leave it there.
And you're right. The money aspect can't be ignored. So if it's saving the city money in some form or fashion, yeah, they'll continue to back it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why that was the first thing that I pointed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that they're saving money, right? Because again, when people talk about reallocating resources, the first thing they talk about is less police on the streets, and it's going to cost us more money to hire people, right? And factually, that's just untrue, in the cities where this has been enacted. So it's important to point that out.
All right, cool. So we'll continue to see. I hope more cities and more townships, more states start to adopt this research, because it sounds like even in other states, similar programs are having very, very good results. So good results means more healthy lives being saved.
Ithaca, Ithaca, New York is another good example. They did another pilot program in Ithaca, New York. Anybody listening under the sound of our voice can look it up. Analyze 911 calls. Proof is in the statistics.
That's it. Can't argue that. All right, so we're gonna change lanes here. All right, we're gonna go the social media dating route. All right. So
interesting topic here.
Interesting
one.
All right. So, and I know you're the love guru, so I know you're gonna have a lot of input on this, Jay. All right. So,
I don't know about this one, man, but let's go.
So, is it possible that swipes on dating apps like Hinge and OKCupid might be racist? All right, let's get into it. So, there are these authors of a new book that are arguing for race-blind dating apps and the removal of filters of race and ethnicity. So the authors of The Dating Divide are showing how online dating sites exacerbate racial divisions. And through these filters, they did a study, and they found that the race-related preference filters on these digital dating platforms help foster racist attitudes, especially towards Black women. So there was a study that was performed about dating preferences along racial lines on OKCupid, which came to a similar conclusion that Black women had a hard time matching on dating apps, as did Black and Asian men. The study also found that preferring to date one's race was fairly common. Like, for instance, Black women prefer to date Black men at a rate that surpassed only by Asian women's preference to date Asian men. So I asked you, Jay, the question I have for you is it okay to say I prefer this race of people and I don't like this race of people for romantic interests? What are your thoughts?
Okay. All right. Is it okay in general?
On general, and I guess through the removal, I guess, kind of within on these dating apps.
All right, so let's talk about it two ways. One, and this was something I had wrote by. I think people do it in general anyway, right? I think visually, when individuals select, a partner or interest, they automatically, are gonna be interested in people according to a certain, height, maybe weight, body size, ethnicity, skin tone, all of those things. I think that just kind of is one of those things that consciously or unconsciously we just compute with it in our mind, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was one. I didn't know you was going to start with that question, but I think that was no. I think that was one of the problems I had with the study, right? And let me first make my position clear.
Go ahead.
My position is that I think the experiences that a lot of the African American women in this article that were quoted, that they reported, in terms of having being racist stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
Being most likely to receive offensive messages. I think it is reflective of what we see in society. So let me say that, right? I think it's reflective of what we see in movies. I think it's reflective of what we see in beauty magazines, images, in a lot of different ways, right? I think this article kind of misses the mark in my opinion, only because I think when individuals go on a dating site, I don't think that removing the dating preferences, especially if you still have pictures up of individuals, I don't think it's really going to change much, because I don't think somebody who's not interested in an African-American woman or man or Latinx woman or man, I don't think they're going to change their mind because they can't filter them out. You know what I mean? So that's where I think the intent was good, but I think it misses the mark in terms of what the intervention that they want to implement, like removing the preference. So that's my first thought. So let me know if I'm missing something, or what did you think when you read it?
Keep flowing, bro. Keep flowing. You all
right? And then the second thing I was going to say is, so we remove it, right? Are we just prolonging the rejection or the abuse that the person might experience, right? Because you have somebody, we're talking about people, not my feelings now. We're talking about people that will put in, I don't want to see Jason, right? I don't want Black males with dreads. I don't want Black males under 6 feet tall, right?
Right,
I'm
right.
gone, right? I'm 5'10", I'm gone, right? So now you remove those things and now I appear. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Maybe I match with the person. Maybe there's no pictures, just preferences. So now what? If I don't pique the person's interest, if they're interested in white men, the fact that you remove the preference is not gonna, make them entertain conversation with me. That's just how I feel about it.
Mm.
Um, so again, and I'm just wondering if the rejection and the interaction would be even worse at that point. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So I agree with the experiences that the people were reporting. And again, I think it's reflective of what goes on in society, right? But I just think it misses the mark in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, man.
Yeah.
And then I have a question. I have a question for you.
Okay.
The other side of it, I like to take the other side of a point, right? So I'm a black man, right? I moved to the whitest city in America, Portland, right? I want to meet a black or Latinx woman, right? So what do? I go to Bumble, go to one of these, and what do I put on my preferences?
Mm-hmm.
Black or Latinx women, right? Whereas before I might have had to scroll through 200 people, right? Because the city is 90%, Pacific, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Asian, Pacific Islander, and Caucasian, right? Now I get that small percentage of people that I'm looking for,
Yeah.
right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not for a date, maybe it's for a social group, right? So that's the other side, right?
Right.
So what do we call that? I mean, I'm not using a reverse racism argument coming from me.
No,
You
but
understand what I'm saying?
you
But
make a good point, because that's where it gets tricky. Because
right,
that's absolutely where it gets tricky. Because using this filter, there, like you said, there are two sides, and it absolutely could allow some people to use this filter, or someone of color, like you mentioned, saying your example, to use the feature to find a friendly face on an app, in which could be like, as opposed to them seeing like a whole sea of like white torsos, right? If they want to see, and that's how it is like in the real world, right? Like you said, if you're in an area where it's predominantly white and you want to say, all right, well, I'm looking for someone that's that can identify possibly with my experience, that I have maybe some more similar background and things of that nature, then yeah, like in my opinion, I believe that that's okay using the app in that sense. The other side
right,
of it, or it could be used just for like institutionalized racial profiling. So like there are two sides of it. But how, like you said, I think it definitely comes down to why you're filtering, kind of, I guess, your reasoning, or how, the genuine, because people are allowed to have a type when it comes to dating. Like you said, whether it's
right.
I want someone that's tall, I want someone that's thick, I want somebody that's, whatever the person's preferences, and I
Oh,
think,
okay, tall and thick. That's your preference, huh? Tall and
bro,
thick.
bro,
Right.
bro,
That's
listen, man,
at least
full
at
well,
least we know what you put.
bro, you know, and I know full well at 5'6", bro, let some tall chick come in here and look at me, they're gonna be like, yo, are you serious?
Hey man,
You
hey
know what I
man.
mean? Listen,
Listen, man.
they're I doubt that they're gonna be
Yeah,
like, "What's up,
man.
shorty?" Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Hey
but
man, don't
like,
listen, man. Don't count
it's
yourself out, man.
oh no, brother,
Count
listen, man.
yourself out, my brother.
Hey man, you know what I mean? Listen, we all the same height laying down. But look, you know what I mean? It's a situation where,
That's right.
you
That's right.
know, it's more, I feel like you said, it could be a situation where you're setting the person up for rejection if they don't, because it's also been a thing where the filter has kind of allowed people to like really be free to kind of express like whatever biases or whatever misogyny, whatever they have towards, especially women of color, because that's something that they probably wouldn't do face to face, right? But you can do that. That's the thing that these apps allow you to do, is that, well, I have a certain thought or feeling towards whatever person of color or whatever situation may be, and you can kind of use that through the app, as opposed to, because you wouldn't do that in person. So, it's a thing. I see the benefit of it for me, where it's like, okay, well, if by removing these filters, it reduces the frequency in which people are of color, because that's what they talked about in the article. If it reduces, which if we're talking about females of color, and if they're always the subject of this erotic objectification, like you said, like of all these other different sexist remarks, if the filter reduces that, then I'm all for it, right? If it's removing, if it reduces like the implicity, and then it promotes the idea that we're going into the direction of race shouldn't be a criteria for partner selection, I'm all for it if that's the benefit. But again, that's what I said, it gets tricky and you don't always know. So I
Right.
see the direction, or what the mark that they're trying to go for. I really believe that it comes down to what the person's purpose is, or why they're kind of filtering it out. Like you said, if it's a situation where it's just like, oh, I only want whites, no blacks allowed, like, all right, what's the kind of motivation or thing behind that? Is a situation where you're all right, maybe it's a racism thing, or maybe you're just not into black guys. It could be, it depends, it varies. So that's kind of like
I
where
mean,
I stand with.
I guess the last thing I'll say about it is I'm not, they wrote the article in the book, so I'm not gonna act like I'm an expert um on their research and all of that stuff. But again, just from kind of looking at, I I think the way they were kind of shaping it was like the preferences was what created the environment for people for the insults and all those things. And
Right.
I don't, from a just looking on its face, I think it's the anonymity. I think it's
Yeah.
cowards hiding behind a computer. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So they can say
And
that
so
stuff that they wouldn't say in person.
right. So I don't see how that's stopped by removing the preference, and then you can still have the person with the same black face in front of you that you can still send the same message to. It doesn't make any sense, and you still have the anonymity. So
Yeah.
that's why I said, even if well-intentioned, I think they missed the mark. I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. I'm old school. I still believe in meeting people in the public forum, public setting. This seems already with the filters and things with the OKCupid. It's too much work, bro. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy lover, so I'm you know what I mean. I don't. No, I'll meet people in person. I don't know. But I get it.
All right,
Works.
everybody heard it.
What's up? Come see
He's
me.
a lazy lover. Everybody
Lazy
heard
lover. Lazy lover. Pull up.
Oh man, yo, I'm putting that on a commercial, man. I'm putting that on. Oh man.
All right. So
All right, what else we got, bro?
all right. So I'm gonna ask you another question. All right. Have you ever
Yeah.
experienced, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and you know that you should be asleep, Jay, but you're on
Right.
your phone and you've gone down this social media rabbit hole of bad news and other different things that are on your screen, and you can't find your way out. And has that ever happened to you?
It has. You keep scrolling and scrolling, video
Yeah.
after video.
All right. Well, you are not alone. Okay. So this is called doom scrolling. And for those that aren't aware of what doom scrolling is the compulsively scrolling through content on social media that is depressing or worrying. All right. So this became actually one of the words of the year last year, in 2020, especially as COVID-19 and the pandemic saw people turn to the internet for more information and for answers to a lot of their fears. All right. So an important or a question that usually comes up is, why do people doom scroll? All right. Well, humans, we're hardwired to learn and want to know what's going on. We're very curious. It's how a lot of times in really basic circumstances and over time, it's how people have survived. So it's also one of those reasons why this curiosity, why people tend to slow down when there's an accident on the highway, which is something that I hate, man. But because people just got to keep moving. It's not happening to you. Just keep going down the highway. So this is why we doom scroll. It's that constant need to gain information, and especially during during COVID, and especially it seems like there was a study that came out, and doom scrolling habit tends to be more prevalent among patients with pre-existing mental health conditions. And there was a study that was completed in 2020 that found a link between COVID-19 related media exposure and severe anxiety and depression and topic specific fear. So, Jay, what was your take as you were reading through this article?
Um, Listen, this is to me especially relevant now, right? We talked about this a lot in a lot of the trainings I was doing last year, in terms of groups like how to cope with depression, with anxiety, stress, and all of those things. Um, and related to COVID, especially, right? Especially when all of the numbers were piling up, when we had consistent news coverage about people dying, about areas of the country and different countries being ravaged.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we wanted to get away from it, it was everywhere, right? It was on television, it was on our phones. There was always somebody popping up with a new story. So it's easy to kind of get sucked into that cycle. So we were kind of looking at it as in terms of stress management, and just limiting your media time, your media time, right? And knowing that kind of important information, if it's important enough, you'll get it. Whether you get it, from a coworker at work, whether you get it, from your radio or from your television. It's important to stay informed, but you want to limit the time that you're kind of exposed to that content, especially if you know it's negative.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time just talking about that, behavioral interventions, for lack of a better term, in terms of things that you can put up in place to limit your exposure, right? Because we know, we talked about during the racial discrimination, racial trauma training, about being inundated with images, right? This is kind of the same thing, right? Whether it's bodies related to COVID-19, whether it's multiple shootings of unarmed Black males, all of these things, right? We can go down the hole and find ourselves like occupied with these things. So we want to kind of limit the time that we look at them.
Yeah, this seemed very similar to like confirmation bias in the sense of, especially if you're talking about, like, we just finished up an election last year. So like you said, there was no shortage of like all information and things that were being flooded to the phones, in addition to COVID, in addition to, the racial uprising. But it's almost like I look at it where if the confirmation bias piece that comes into play is that you can go down that rabbit hole if your thoughts and perspective, like either whether it be COVID or whether it be on the, social political, news, depending on what side of the aisle you fall on, if you're having a thought that like, okay, well, this particular political group is bad, or if this particular, issue is bad, then you'll be able to find and focus on articles and information and news that'll confirm what you're thinking, right? It'll be a situation where, because the way the algorithms and the way our phones, are able to pinpoint are able to peak what our interests are, you'll continue to go down that rabbit hole because you're finding all this information that's just confirming all of your thoughts and your perspectives. And since we're glued to our phone, it's like we have that companion of doom right next to us. So we're going to continue to go down it.
Right. I think, and again, I think, we see the same kind of issue with children, right? When it comes to like cyberbullying, right? Putting down the phone is something that they can't do, right? Especially if multiple people are commenting, if something is going viral, people are sharing it, all of those things. You kind of get in the same cycle of doom scrolling, right? In terms of checking everybody's posts, everything and all of those things. And I think an important thing, like you said, individuals who have mental health diagnoses or are vulnerable to certain symptoms, of specific diagnoses or just stress in general, have to be extra careful, right? And I think that's where the skills come in terms of, having some healthy boundaries in terms of when you put your phone down, activities that you engage in that don't involve electronics, specifically the phone, and things like that. And to be honest with you, I think those things kind of need to be incorporated as part of like just regular healthy living anyway, but especially now. So that's kind of what I would say about that.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it was definitely an interesting article.
It is, because one thing, like you said, if especially if those already have it, it's going to exacerbate your symptoms, right? So if you're already struggling with depression, you're already struggling with anxiety, the PTSD, the hopelessness, all of these things become more and more severe. And like you mentioned, it's definitely incorporating some boundaries, right? Because that's the main question that people might ask: what do I do, right? How do I detach from the doom scrolling? How do I get out of that rabbit hole? And and to highlight what you mentioned is definitely incorporating boundaries. You want to avoid dwelling and searching for the worst case scenarios of whatever area or whatever you're looking at, whatever you're scrolling through. The boundaries is I think it's unrealistic for, like you said, with the cyberbullying, when we've heard parents or we've heard older individuals say, well, just put the phone down, right? That's not realistic for any kid.
Right.
So, the same thing is applied for us as adults, or anyone that kind of gets caught up in this pattern, is at least doing like that harm reduction, right? Trying to control your media consumption as much as possible, like take breaks. So, okay, yeah, we want to stay up to date on the latest COVID protocols and all these other different initiatives and things that are coming across our screen. But it's like, okay, well, if you saw something in the morning, do you necessarily need to check the news at 12, at noon, right, on your lunch break?
Right.
Do maybe you don't need to check the news again or whatever that site may be until you get home during the evening. So in addition, like you said, the boundaries is pacing yourself, having, taking news breaks, controlling that media consumption. And what I always do is, because I'm a big self-care guy, you are also, is doing something pleasurable, right? To also offset that, doing something
Right.
relaxing, and bringing yourself, that the self-care is, it's so crucial. Like you said, that should be a part of our daily routine anyway, but even more so now that we're in this current climate of health issues, race stuff, all these other different stressors that we're all getting exposed to. It's so imperative that we incorporate that self-care, doing something enjoyable, doing something relaxing, so you don't get caught, or at least it can kind of mitigate that pattern of doom scrolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think those are all good, suggestions. And the only thing I would add is, I think relevant not only to, COVID-19, but just in general, I think we need to kind of incorporate those into our regular routine, just to promote positive mental health in general. That's all.
Absolutely. And especially at night. I just thought of something. Like a lot of times, like the scenario I posed to you earlier was, a lot of times that starts at late at night. So I would totally recommend and caution people to avoid checking the news and checking the stuff at night, because you're up. Once you get peaked, like it's that downward spiral. So whatever it is, avoid it at night, guys. Like that's, whatever happens at night, whatever you're checking on at night, I promise you will be available in the morning. I promise you. So putting in those boundaries.
No, I was laughing because I thought you had jokes because I'm running out of light over here.
Oh no, man! I see you, man. You're doing it big. For those that don't know or can't see, if you're just listening on one of our streaming platforms, you can't see the visual that we got going on here. Dr. Coleman is reporting to us via satellite at an undisclosed location. Okay, it's very festive
right.
over there. You can see the he's calling us from. He's got the brownstone vibes going, and he's killing it. He's always remote at a remote location, undisclosed, of course. Not going to do that HIPAA or confidentiality breach. But he's out there. He's in these streets, ladies and gentlemen. This is where it is. So, and you know what?
Hey man,
the fact that he's dedicated, this conversation is going well into the evening, and he is still reporting live. Okay, that's how he does it. There it is.
Listen, man, I got the candlelight out here, my brother. I got the candlelight. Man. Look, I wasn't even gonna show you. I got the candlelight.
Hey, man, listen. It was good for our ancestors. It's good for us. Sometimes we gotta take it back in time. Sometimes.
Hey, man, we get it done, my brother. We get it done.
Absolutely. So as we wrap things up, anything, Dr. Coleman, that we should highlight before we get out of here?
No, just again want to thank everybody for listening, for the support. Please continue to share the videos, like the videos. Please comment if there's something you like or if there's something you want to see added. And we took a little break, but we will be back next week with the viewer questions. And that's really all I got.
Absolutely. So like Jay just mentioned, the Black Psychologist podcast at gmail.com. Send your videos, send your questions, send your comments, anything that you would like, some input or some reflection from us. And, episode 23, guys. So we appreciate everybody listening and the support, like Jay mentioned, because if you guys aren't listening and watching and subscribing, then, we're not able to be here. So we appreciate your support. And, that's all I got. All right, Jay. You stay safe out there while you're calling from the trenches out there live via satellite. And
All right, bro.
that's all we got, guys.
Back,
appreciate everybody. All right, bro.
I'm back to the campfire, man.
There
Later.
you go.